Tonight, we once again dive deep into the universe of Metroid without the need of a controller or a power-up. But first, if you enjoy this cozy tale, please don't forget to unleash a super missile on that like button, or make it a power bomb and hit the notification bell as well. It helps others discover the channel and join our ranks of weary dreamers. And please share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your suggestions for future content. But for now, get cozy and enjoy tonight's expedition into the mysterious world of Metroid. The control room of Samus Aran's gunship hummed with the steady rhythm of life support systems and navigation equipment. Samus sat in the pilot's chair, her Varia suit disengaged and stored in its maintenance bay. Without the armor, she wore a fitted blue jumpsuit, practical and unadorned. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, revealing the sharp angles of her face and the intensity of her blue eyes as she studied the star chart projected before her. The Galactic Federation transmission had been brief. Unusual energy fluctuations detected on the remote planet Elysium, located in a previously unmapped sector of the Cygnus Belt. The planet wasn't a Federation priority. No strategic resources, no colonial outposts, but the energy signature bore similarities to Chozo technology, which meant it fell squarely within Samus's area of expertise. She zoomed in on the holographic representation of Elysium, rotating it slowly to study its crimson atmosphere and rust-colored surface. According to the limited data available, it was a small terrestrial planet with thin but breathable atmosphere, primarily composed of iron oxide particles that gave the sky its distinctive blood-red hue. Surface scans showed vast desert plains, punctuated by towering rock formations, with scattered oases of vegetation surrounding the few freshwater sources. What made the planet truly remarkable, however, was what lay beneath its surface. An extensive network of abandoned tunnels and chambers that preliminary scans suggested were neither natural formations nor recent constructions. "Computer, estimated arrival time to Elysium?" Samus asked, reaching for a mug of synthesized coffee that had gone cold hours ago. "Approximately 8 hours, 17 minutes at current velocity," the ship's AI responded. "Recommend decelerating to standard approach speed in 6 hours to avoid detection by potential planetary defense systems." Samus nodded. The Federation briefing had mentioned no indications of current habitation or active security measures, but caution had kept her alive through countless missions where intelligence had proven incomplete. She took a sip of the cold coffee, grimaced, and set it aside. 8 hours was enough time for proper rest, something she'd been neglecting lately. The last mission, eliminating a space pirate genetics laboratory on an asteroid in the Tannhauser sector, had been physically straightforward but mentally taxing. The pirates had been experimenting with splicing Metroid DNA into indigenous life forms, creating abominations that still haunted the edges of her dreams. "Set course for Elysium," she instructed. "Wake me 2 hours before arrival." "Acknowledged," the AI replied. "Course set. Good night, Samus." As she made her way to the small sleeping quarters, Samus felt the familiar tension between anticipation and wariness that preceded every mission. The Chozo had raised her, gifted her with their technology and DNA, made her into the warrior she had become. Any discovery related to their legacy both drew and unsettled her, a connection to her past that never failed to alter her future. The descent through Elysium's atmosphere bathed the gunship in an eerie crimson glow. Particles of iron oxide scraped against the hull, creating a soft, hissing sound that penetrated even the ship's insulated cockpit. Samus, now fully encased in her Varia suit, monitored the external sensors as the landscape below came into focus. Energy signature located, the ship's computer announced. Coordinates locked. Ground-penetrating scan indicates subterranean structure approximately 70 meters below surface level. The ship's view screen displayed a topographical map highlighting a network of tunnels and chambers beneath an unremarkable stretch of desert. At the center of the network pulsed a bright point of energy, the source of the signature that had brought her here. "Any signs of recent activity?" Samus asked, adjusting her suit's environmental settings to compensate for the planet's lower gravity and thin atmosphere. "Negative. No indication of technological activity within the past century based on dust accumulation patterns and structural degradation analysis." Samus guided the ship to a landing site a safe distance from the marked entrance to the underground complex. As the landing struts made contact with the rust-colored soil, clouds of fine dust billowed around the vessel, momentarily obscuring visibility. "Maintain surveillance mode," she instructed the ship's computer. "Alert me to any approaching life forms larger than the local fauna baseline." Acknowledged. Surveillance mode engaged. The airlock hissed open, and Samus stepped onto the surface of Elysium for the first time. Her boots sank slightly into the loose soil, the fine dust immediately coating the lower portion of her suit in a reddish film. The landscape stretched before her, a vast crimson desert under a blood-red sky, broken only by towering rock formations that rose like sentinels in the distance. Her HUD revealed the direction of the subterranean entrance, approximately half a kilometer east of her position. The suit's sensors detected minimal life signs, primarily small reptilian creatures that had adapted to the harsh desert environment, and scattered patches of hardy vegetation that had evolved to thrive on minimal moisture. Samus began moving toward the marked coordinates, each step carefully measured. Despite the lower gravity, the fine dust made walking somewhat treacherous, like traversing a beach of exceptionally loose sand. Her suit automatically adjusted its balance systems to compensate. The entrance to the underground complex was almost invisible until she stood directly before it. A narrow fissure in the base of a modest rock formation, barely wide enough for her to pass through while wearing the Varia suit. Without the precise coordinates, she might have walked past it entirely. "Beginning structural analysis," she murmured, activating her scan visor. The data stream confirmed what she'd suspected. The fissure was not natural, but had been deliberately disguised to appear so. The rock itself had been altered at a molecular level to create the opening while maintaining the appearance of natural formation. "Chozo craftsmanship," she noted, recognizing the technique from similar hidden entrances she'd encountered on Talon 4 and Zebes. The Chozo had always preferred to work with natural materials rather than against them, adapting rather than imposing their will upon their environments. Samus activated her suit's illumination system and stepped into the narrow passage. The walls were smooth, almost polished, bearing faint etchings that her scan visor identified as ceremonial Chozo script, too degraded to translate fully. but containing repeated references to sanctuary and quietude. The passage descended at a gentle angle, winding deeper into the planet's crust. After approximately 50 meters, it widened into a small antechamber adorned with more elaborate carvings. Here, the script was better preserved, depicting what appeared to be a historical narrative. Samus paused to study the images, her suit automatically recording and attempting to translate the ancient text. The carvings told of a group of Chozo who had separated from the main civilization, seeking a place of contemplation away from what they perceived as their species' growing technological hubris. They had come to Elysium specifically for its isolation and harsh beauty, establishing an enclave dedicated to finding balance between their advanced knowledge and the simpler wisdom of natural existence. "Fascinating," she murmured. "A splinter group of philosophical purists." Such divisions within Chozo society were rarely documented in the historical records she'd encountered. The notion that some had actively rejected the technological path their civilization was taking added new complexity to her understanding of her adoptive species. Beyond the antechamber, the passage opened into a vast, circular hall that took her breath away. The ceiling soared at least 30 meters above, its surface embedded with countless small crystals that caught and amplified her suit's light, creating the illusion of a starry night sky. The walls were lined with alcoves containing what appeared to be meditation seats carved from the native stone, each facing toward the center of the chamber. And at that center stood the source of the energy signature, a crystalline structure approximately 2 meters tall that pulsed with a soft, amber light. It resembled a tree, with a solid trunk that branched into increasingly delicate formations near its top, each branch terminating in a small, glowing node. Samus approached it cautiously, her scan visor working to analyze its composition and purpose. The readings were unusual. The crystal itself appeared to be an organic technological hybrid, containing elements of both traditional Chozo machinery and biological components. Some kind of data storage device, she wondered aloud, circling the structure. Or perhaps a communication node. As she neared, the crystal's pulsing intensified, its light shifting from amber to a warm gold. Samus stopped, instantly alert to the change. Her experiences with responsive Chozo artifacts had taught her caution. They could be defensive, or they might be attempting to interface with her suit's systems, recognizing the Chozo technology in its design. Before she could decide on a course of action, a soft voice spoke, not through her suit's audio systems, but directly into her mind. "The hatchling returns to the nest." The words were Chozo, in a dialect Samus recognized from her childhood on Zebes. It was a term of endearment Old Bird had often used for her, hatchling, the young one under their protection. "Who's there?" she asked aloud, her arm cannon raised instinctively as she scanned the chamber. "Identify yourself." "We are echo, memory, imprint, not alive, as you understand life, but preserved. We recognize the gifts we gave you, child of 2 worlds." The crystal pulsed in rhythm with the words, confirming it as the source of the communication. Samus lowered her weapon slightly, but remained alert. "You're a Chozo AI, a stored consciousness. We are the collective wisdom of those who chose this path of quietude. Our physical forms returned to dust centuries ago, but we preserved our understanding here, in this garden of crystal thought, should any seek it. Samus's mind raced with the implications. She had encountered Chozo ghosts before, spectral remnants tied to locations of great trauma or significance. But this was different. This seemed to be a deliberately created repository of consciousness, a library of thought and experience left behind intentionally. Why are you contacting me now? The Federation detected energy fluctuations from this location recently. The crystal's light dimmed momentarily, then brightened again. The balance shifts. The quietude is threatened. We activated the beacon when we sensed the disturbance. What disturbance? I've detected no other presence here. Not here, not yet, but approaching. The hunters who would claim what is not theirs to take. A chill ran through Samus, despite her suit's regulated temperature. Space pirates? She asked, though the description could fit numerous threats she'd encountered over the years. They call themselves the Kraken Imperium. They seek weapons, power, dominion. They have detected fragments of our knowledge and misunderstood its purpose. She had encountered the Kraken before, an insectoid species known for their aggressive territorial expansion and their practice of sending young warriors on conquest missions as rites of passage. They were not as organized or persistent as the space pirates, but they were formidable opponents nonetheless, especially in numbers. What have they found that brought them here? What are they after? The crystal pulsed more rapidly, its light taking on a reddish tint that matched the planet's crimson sky. They discovered one of our seed archives on a world they conquered. It contained references to what they have interpreted as weapons. Our studies of energy manipulation and consciousness transference. They do not understand that these were tools for communion, not dominion. Samus processed this information quickly. The Chozo had indeed developed technologies that, in the wrong hands, could be weaponized to devastating effect. Their mastery of energy manipulation had produced her arm cannon and the various beam weapons she utilized. If the Kraken had found information suggesting more powerful applications of these principles, how much time do I have before they arrive? Their advanced scouts already orbit this world. The main force follows within one planetary rotation. Less than a day then. Not enough time to call for Federation support, even if she wanted to involve them in a discovery of this magnitude. What do you need me to do? She asked, already calculating strategies and resources. This sanctuary contains knowledge that must not fall into hands that would misuse it. We cannot destroy ourselves. It is not within our programming parameters. We require your assistance, hatchling. Samus frowned behind her visor. You want me to destroy this facility? All the knowledge it contains? Not destruction, transference. The crystal heart before you can be removed and transported to safety. The secondary systems and archives must be secured against discovery. And how do I secure them? There are 3 stabilization nodes located throughout the complex. Deactivating them in the correct sequence will initiate a controlled structural collapse, sealing the lower chambers where the most sensitive archives are stored. The surface structure, this meditation hall and the connecting passages, will remain intact, but inaccessible without tools and knowledge the Kraken do not possess. It was a solid plan, preserving the most dangerous knowledge while maintaining the facade of the sanctuary. Anyone scanning the site would still detect Chozo architecture, but would likely conclude it was merely a meditation retreat with no strategic value once they couldn't access the deeper chambers. "Show me where these nodes are located," Samus requested. The crystal projected a three-dimensional map of the complex into her mind, a startlingly intimate method of communication that bypassed her suit's systems entirely. The map revealed a structure far more extensive than she had anticipated, with multiple levels extending deep into the planet's crust. 3 points illuminated on the map, each in a different section of the complex. The nearest was located in what appeared to be a hydroponics chamber, one level below her current position. The second was in what the map labeled as memory archives on the eastern side of the complex. The third and final node was in the deepest level, in a chamber simply marked as cradle. "I'll deactivate the nodes and return for the crystal," she decided. "But I need to know, what exactly does this crystal contain? What knowledge am I preserving by taking it with me?" The crystal's light softened to a gentle blue. "We contain the complete philosophical and spiritual understanding of the Quietude sect. Our studies of consciousness, energy, and the interconnection of all living things. In the wrong hands, these principles could be corrupted to control minds, to harvest life force, to dominate rather than commune. In the right hands, they offer healing, understanding, and growth. And you trust me with this knowledge. How do you know I'm the right hands? We know you, Samus Aran. We have watched your path through the stars. You have faced the temptation of power many times and chosen preservation over dominion. You carry our blood, our gifts, our responsibility. Who better to guard our legacy?" The simple faith in these words struck her more deeply than she expected. Throughout her life as a bounty hunter, she had made countless judgment calls, eliminated threats that others might have exploited, and destroyed power sources that others would have harnessed. It was reassuring, in a way she hadn't realized she needed, to know that the Chozo, or at least this echo of them, approved of those choices. "I'll secure the nodes," she promised, "but I will need your guidance." "You will have it, hatchling," the voice assured. "Now, you must move quickly, for there is no time to spare." The hydroponics chamber was a marvel of Chozo bioengineering. Despite centuries of abandonment, the automated systems continued to function, maintaining an enclosed ecosystem where plants from dozens of worlds grew in careful harmony. The air was rich with oxygen and the sweet scent of unfamiliar blossoms. The stabilization node was integrated into the central irrigation system, a crystalline formation similar to the one in the meditation hall, but smaller and emitting a steady green light. Samus approached it cautiously, scanning for defense systems or booby traps, but found none. "How do I deactivate it?" she asked, knowing the crystal consciousness could still hear her. "Place your hand upon it and channel a focused beam of energy through your arm cannon, not to destroy, but to communicate your intent." Samus did as instructed, resting her left hand on the cool surface of the crystal while adjusting her arm cannon to emit a low-power energy beam. As the energy flowed through her suit into the node, the crystal's green light flickered, then dimmed to a faint glow. "The first key is turned," the voice confirmed in her mind. "Proceed to the memory archives." The eastern passage led her through a series of smaller chambers that appeared to have been living quarters for the Chozo who had inhabited this sanctuary. Unlike the austere meditation hall, these rooms contained personal touches, niches displaying carefully preserved artifacts, wall carvings depicting individual Chozo and their contributions to the community, even what appeared to be artistic creations unique to each inhabitant. It was a side of Chozo life Samus had rarely encountered in her explorations. The Chozo ruins she had investigated on other worlds had typically been research facilities, weapons repositories, or temples, places of collective purpose rather than individual expression. These quarters humanized the Chozo in a way that both comforted and saddened her, reminding her of the family she had lost twice over. The memory archives themselves were housed in a hexagonal chamber whose walls were lined with crystalline storage units, similar to the main structure in the meditation hall, though much smaller. Each unit pulsed with a different colored light, creating a rainbow effect that rippled around the room in slow waves. Each crystal contains the complete memories and knowledge of one of our members, the voice explained. Their experiences, their insights, their wisdom, preserved for future generations to learn from. This is how you maintain your consciousness after so much time, Samus realized. These are your component parts. Yes, we are many and one, individual and collective. The stabilization node maintains the energy field that allows our separate essences to communicate and function as a unified consciousness. The node itself was located at the center of the chamber, a crystalline pedestal that emitted a pure white light. She repeated the deactivation process, feeling a momentary resistance before the light dimmed to a pale silver glow. The second key is turned, the voice acknowledged, though Samus noticed it seemed slightly weaker, more distant. The final node awaits in the cradle. The passage to the deepest level of the complex required her to navigate a series of narrow tunnels that wound downward in a spiral pattern. Unlike the upper levels, which had been carved with obvious care and artistic intent, these passages felt more primordial, as if following natural formations in the planet's bedrock. The air grew warmer as she descended, and her suit's sensors detected increasing levels of geothermal energy. By the time she reached the chamber marked as Cradle on her HUD map, the ambient temperature had risen almost 20 degrees above that of the surface. The chamber took her breath away. It was a perfect sphere, its walls composed of a glossy black material that absorbed and reflected light in equal measure, creating an effect like standing in the center of a dark mirror. The floor was covered in a shallow pool of clear liquid that rippled with the ambient heat, producing soft waves that lapped at the edges of a central platform. On this platform stood the final stabilization node, a crystal unlike the others, shaped not like a tree, but like an egg, pulsing with a deep, ruby light that matched the crimson sky above the planet's surface. Our beginning and our end, the voice explained, now noticeably fainter. The first seed of consciousness planted by our founders, from which all other crystals were grown. Samus waded through the shallow pool, her suit automatically analyzing the liquid and reporting it as a complex nutrient solution, similar to amniotic fluid, but infused with trace elements that her database could not identify. As she approached the final node, she felt a strange resistance, as if moving through a field of increased gravity or magnetic repulsion. Her suit's systems registered no such field, yet the sensation persisted. "There's something different about this one," she observed. "Some kind of protection I can't scan." "It protects itself through connection to our collective consciousness. As the other nodes power down, its defenses intensify. You must overcome this resistance through force of will as much as through your technology." Samus steeled herself and pressed forward, focusing her mind on her purpose. The resistance increased with each step, becoming almost painful as she neared the crystal seed. Her muscles strained against an invisible force, and even her suit's power systems seemed to labor. When she finally reached the platform, she was breathing heavily from the exertion. The crystal seed pulsed more rapidly as she approached, its ruby light taking on an almost aggressive intensity. "Place both hands upon it," the voice instructed. "Your cannon and your touch. Balance of power and connection." She hesitated. "My scan visor isn't detecting any danger, but this feels like a trap." "Not a trap, but a test. The seed must know you before it will yield." With cautious determination, Samus placed her left hand on the smooth surface of the crystal seed, while pointing her arm cannon at it with the right. The moment both made contact, a surge of energy flowed through her body, not painful, but intensely disorienting, as if her consciousness was being pulled in multiple directions simultaneously. Images flashed through her mind. The Chozo who had raised her, planets she had never visited, beings she had never met, knowledge she had never learned. It was overwhelming, a flood of information too vast for her mind to process. "Focus," the voice urged, now seeming to come from within her own thoughts rather than externally. "Find your center in the flood." Samus closed her eyes, though it made no difference to the cascade of images. She concentrated on her breathing, on the solid feel of the crystal beneath her hands, on the mission that had brought her here. Gradually, the flood of information receded, becoming a manageable flow rather than a drowning torrent. When she opened her eyes again, the ruby light of the crystal seed had softened to a warm amber glow, similar to the main crystal in the meditation hall. The resistance had vanished, replaced by a sense of acceptance. "What was that?" she asked, her voice steady despite the lingering disorientation. "The seed shared itself with you, as it does with all who would tend to it. It now recognizes you as guardian, not threat. And now I deactivate it like the others. Yes, but with greater care. This node is the anchor for the entire system. When it powers down, the collapse sequence will begin immediately. You will have limited time to return to the surface and retrieve the primary crystal." Samus adjusted her arm cannon to its lowest power setting and carefully channeled a focused beam of energy into the crystal seed. Unlike the previous nodes, which had dimmed almost immediately, this one seemed to absorb the energy, its glow intensifying briefly before beginning a slow, pulsating fade. "The final key is turned," the voice confirmed, now barely more than a whisper in her mind. The sanctuary prepares to sleep. Make haste, Guardian. A low rumble shook the chamber, and her visor displayed a proximity alert, micro tremors indicating the beginning of structural shifts throughout the complex. This wasn't a violent collapse, but rather a carefully engineered reconfiguration, sealing off sections and rearranging access points to protect the most sensitive areas. Samus activated her speed booster and raced back through the winding tunnels, now increasingly challenging to navigate as subtle shifts in the walls narrowed passages and occasionally blocked familiar routes entirely. Her suit's mapping system continuously updated, finding alternative paths where necessary. By the time she reached the memory archives, the changes were more pronounced. The hexagonal chamber was sealing itself, the crystal storage units retracting into protected niches in the walls. The silver glow of the deactivated node had faded entirely, leaving the room illuminated only by her suit's lights. The hydroponics chamber had undergone an even more dramatic transformation. The plants had withdrawn into specialized containment pods, and the irrigation system had drained completely. The chamber itself was compressing, the ceiling gradually lowering as structural supports shifted to form a protective shell around the preserved ecosystem. When Samus finally reached the meditation hall, she found it largely unchanged, except for the state of the central crystal. It had detached from its base and now hovered slightly above the floor, pulsing with a steady golden light. "Take it," the voice instructed, now so faint that she had to concentrate to hear it. "We will guide you no further. Our consciousness returns to dormancy to preserve energy." Samus approached the crystal carefully. It was larger than she had initially estimated, nearly as tall as she was in her Varia suit, and likely weighing several 100 kilograms despite its delicate appearance. Yet as she reached for it, she discovered it moved with surprising ease, as if it had adjusted its mass to accommodate transport. "Thank you for trusting me with this," she breathed, securing the crystal carefully against her side. "I'll ensure it remains safe." There was no response from the voice, but the crystal pulsed once with increased brightness, an acknowledgement or farewell. The rumbling had intensified, and her scans indicated that the entrance passage was beginning to shift. She activated her speed booster again and raced through the narrowing corridor, the crystal somehow adapting to her movements, neither impeding her progress nor sustaining damage from the rapid pace. She emerged onto the surface of Elysium just as the fissure entrance sealed itself behind her, the rock formation rippling briefly before settling into a configuration that revealed no hint of the passage that had existed moments before. To any observer, it would now appear to be simply another unremarkable rock formation in the Crimson Desert. Samus's heads-up display flashed a warning. Her ship had detected approaching spacecraft entering the planet's atmosphere. The Kraken Advanced Scouts had arrived, exactly as the crystal consciousness had predicted. With the crystal secured against her side, she sprinted across the loose red soil toward her gunship. Her suit compensated for the additional weight and awkward shape of her burden, maintaining her balance and speed as clouds of dust billowed in her wake. The ship's systems activated remotely as she approached, the entry ramp extending to receive her. Samus bounded up the ramp and into the cargo hold, carefully securing the crystal in a reinforced containment field designed for transporting sensitive artifacts. Multiple vessels detected entering atmosphere, the ship's computer announced. Configuration matches known Kraken scout ships. Estimated time to visual range, 3 minutes. Initiate launch sequence, she commanded, moving swiftly to the cockpit. Stealth systems at maximum. The ship hummed to life around her, engines powering up as the external sensors continuously tracked the approaching Kraken vessels. They appeared to be heading directly for the location of the now sealed sanctuary entrance. Their intelligence had been accurate, even if they were now too late to claim their prize. Samus guided her ship into a low trajectory that kept a large rock formation between her and the approaching Kraken scouts. The vessel's stealth systems would mask its energy signature, but visual detection remained a risk until she could achieve sufficient altitude to engage the FTL drive. Plot a course to Calliope Station, she instructed the computer. We'll need a secure location to study this artifact. Calliope Station was a research outpost operated by a former Federation scientist Samus had worked with in the past. Located in a remote asteroid field, it maintained independence from both Federation oversight and criminal enterprises, making it ideal for sensitive research. As her ship climbed through Elysium's crimson atmosphere, Samus caught a glimpse of the Kraken scouts landing near the former sanctuary entrance. Their insectoid vessels, with sharp angular designs reminiscent of their creators' exoskeletons, settled onto the red soil in a precise formation. Soon they would discover that their prize had been sealed away beyond their reach, and that someone had beaten them to whatever remained accessible. They'll track us, she murmured to herself. The Kraken were persistent hunters, and they would not abandon their quest easily. But she had evaded more determined pursuers in the past. Once clear of the atmosphere, she engaged a series of randomized jump sequences, a tactic she had developed to confuse tracking systems. Each jump lasted only seconds before the ship re-emerged in normal space, changed direction, then jumped again. It was taxing on the engines, but virtually impossible to follow. After the 5th jump, when her sensors confirmed no pursuit, Samus set the final course to Calliope Station and engaged the autopilot. Only then did she remove her helmet, running a hand through her sweat-dampened blonde hair as she exhaled slowly. The mission had taken an unexpected turn, as they so often did. What had begun as a simple investigation of an energy signature had resulted in her becoming the guardian of an ancient Chozo consciousness and all the knowledge it contained. Samus made her way back to the cargo hold, where the crystal pulsed with a steady golden light within its containment field. As she approached, the light brightened slightly, acknowledging her presence. "I hope I made the right choice," she said quietly. Preserving knowledge is always a risk. Even knowledge meant for peace can be twisted toward war in the wrong hands. The crystal didn't respond verbally, the consciousness within apparently remaining dormant as promised, but its light pulsed in a pattern that somehow conveyed reassurance. She smiled faintly. "Rest now. We've got a long journey ahead." Samus returned to the cockpit and settled into the pilot's chair, allowing herself to relax slightly as the stars streaked past the view screen. The Kraken would not give up easily, and she would need to be vigilant in the days ahead. But for now, at least, an important piece of Chozo heritage was safe. As her ship carried her through the vast emptiness of space, Samus reflected on the words the crystal consciousness had spoken to her. "You have faced the temptation of power many times and chosen preservation over dominion. It was true, though she rarely thought of her choices in such terms. Her path had always been guided by a simple principle: protect what deserves protection, preserve what deserves preservation, and never allow power to fall into hands that would misuse it. Today, she honored that principle once again. Whether it would lead to greater wisdom or unforeseen consequences remained to be seen. But as the guardian of the crystal and all it contained, Samus would ensure that whatever knowledge it held would be approached with the same respect and care that the Chozo themselves had intended. The crimson world of Elysium receded behind her, its secrets once again sealed beneath its rust-colored soil, while she carried forward a different kind of legacy, not weapons or power, but understanding. In her experience, that was often the most valuable discovery of all. On Calliope Station, 3 weeks later, Samus stood before the crystal in a specially constructed containment chamber. Dr. Eliza Verne, the station's founder and chief researcher, had helped her design an environment that mimicked the conditions of the Chozo sanctuary: controlled temperature, specific light wavelengths, and a carefully calibrated energy field to sustain the crystal's unique properties. The preliminary analysis is fascinating, Dr. Verne said, reviewing data on a holographic display. The crystal appears to be a hybrid organic technological system unlike anything I've encountered before. It's generating its own energy through what I can only describe as a form of quantum photosynthesis. Samus nodded, her attention fixed on the crystal itself rather than the data. Since arriving at the station, it had remained dormant, its light pulsing steadily but offering no further communication. She had begun to wonder if the consciousness within had truly entered a permanent sleep state, or if it was simply observing, waiting for something specific before awakening again. "What about the information it contains?" she asked. "Have you been able to access any of it?" Dr. Verne shook her head, her grey-streaked dark hair falling across her face. "Not directly. The data structure is too alien for our current interfaces. We've detected massive information storage capacity, but the encryption is beyond our capability to decode." She glanced at Samus with a knowing expression. "I suspect it might respond differently to you, given what you've told me about your experience on Elysium." Samus approached the crystal, removing her gloves to place her bare hand against its smooth surface. The material felt warm and almost soft, despite its apparent solidity. She closed her eyes, focusing on the connection she had felt in the sanctuary, trying to recreate that moment of communication. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then, so faintly that she almost missed it, a whisper touched her mind. "Patience, Guardian. The time for awakening approaches, but is not yet here. Others seek us still." Samus opened her eyes, finding Dr. Verne watching her with keen interest. "It spoke to you, didn't it?" the scientist asked. "Briefly," she confirmed. "It's aware, but conserving energy. And it warned that we're still being pursued." Dr. Verne's expression grew concerned. "The Kraken. You're certain your trail was covered?" "As certain as I can be, but they're persistent." Samus stepped back from the crystal, its light dimming slightly as she broke physical contact. "We should increase security protocols and limit knowledge of what we're studying here. The fewer people who know about the crystal, the better." Agreed. I'll restrict access to this section to just you and me for now. Dr. Werner hesitated, then added, if this consciousness contains what you believe it does, a complete philosophical and spiritual database from an isolated Chozo sect, it could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness itself. The potential applications for healing trauma, expanding awareness, perhaps even preserving human consciousness beyond physical death. That's exactly why it needs protection, Samus interrupted gently. Those same technologies could be weaponized to control minds, to extract information against someone's will, to create soldiers who feel no fear or remorse. She shook her head. The Chozo of the Quietude sect understood this danger. It's why they isolated themselves, why they created this consciousness as a guardian of knowledge rather than a teacher. Dr. Verne nodded slowly. Knowledge at the wrong time can be as dangerous as knowledge in the wrong hands. I understand. She smiled wryly. It's just difficult for a scientist to accept the idea that some discoveries should wait. Not wait forever, Samus clarified. Just until we can ensure they'll be used wisely. She looked back at the crystal, its golden light pulsing with what she now recognized as a pattern similar to breathing. Inhale, exhale, a rhythm of life sustained through centuries. The Chozo believed in balance above all else. Technology and nature, power and restraint, knowledge and wisdom. We'd do well to honor that philosophy. Dr. Verne touched a control panel, adjusting the containment field to optimize the crystal's energy signature. Well, Guardian, it seems you have a new mission. Not destruction or combat, but preservation and protection. She glanced at Samus with a hint of amusement. A change of pace for the galaxy's most famous bounty hunter. Samus smiled slightly. Not entirely new. The best missions have always been about protecting what matters, not just eliminating threats. She placed her hand on the crystal once more, feeling a faint warmth pulse through her fingers. And sometimes, the most valuable discoveries are the ones we choose not to exploit. As if in agreement, the crystal's light brightened momentarily, casting golden reflections across the chamber. In that brief illumination, Samus saw not just her own reflection, but a glimpse of something more. Shadows that resembled Chozo forms, watching over their legacy and its new guardian, with what she could only interpret as approval. The light faded back to its steady pulse, but the impression remained with Samus as she and Dr. Verne left the chamber to make their security arrangements. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Kraken hunters, Federation interest, or other forces that might seek the crystal's power, she was committed to her role as guardian of this ancient wisdom. It was, after all, what the Chozo had prepared her for throughout her life. Not just to fight, but to judge when fighting was necessary. Not just to destroy threats, but to preserve balance. Under the crimson sky of Elysium, she had accepted a new aspect of that responsibility, one that might shape her path among the stars for years to come. And as Calliope Station drifted through the asteroid field that concealed it from casual discovery, the crystal waited patiently, its consciousness dormant but not extinguished, its knowledge preserved for a future that might be ready to receive it with wisdom rather than ambition. For now, that future remained distant, but with Samus Aran as its guardian, it remained possible. And, in the quiet of space, That possibility was